Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. We have three things on the agenda today. Mage Boost nerfs are in, Blizzard officially recognizes the hardcore playstyle, and raid changes are going beyond just numbers. Seasonal Mastery is starting to look more and more like Classic Plus, and it's so important that it does well because it could pave the way for future servers which have even more changes than the ones we are seeing here. At this point in time, the beta is still open, and you can also make template level 60 characters now if you want to. Let's make a start with the Mage Boost. They said in the original post they were going to be taking a crack at fixing it. Let's have a look what they have come up with. They say significantly less experience is now awarded to players who kill a creature, while in a group of one or more players who are at a much higher level than the creature that was slain. Already a pretty solid start to the issue. This alone would have hugely impacted boosting to the point where it would not be worth the effort. However, there is more, which also aims to impact gold farming for the mage player as well. Adjustments have been made to the following dungeons. In Strat, all undead creatures now gain an immunity to snare after 30 seconds of combat, gain immunity to roots after a further 30 seconds of combat. The same goes for Mara. On top of that, 30 seconds after immunity to roots, enemies gain 50% increased move speed. Any type of non-root or snare CC will reset these additional buffs. Nades are on a 1 minute cooldown. Would this break it at all? Just a thought there. And in Zul'Farrak, the zombies now drop less gold, and that's been distributed out to other NPCs in the instance. Pretty interesting stuff. I went over to Mara to see how the change was implemented firsthand, and let me tell you, there's no way you're going to be kiting the entire dungeon from Earthsong Falls. The mobs are going to be getting the 50% move speed bonus long before that, and they really move once they have that buff on. The buffs did not show under the NPCs as being active, though I'm sure a weak aura could be made to show timers near frames or something if certain AoE strats are found to be effective all the same. Here, for example, you can see the mobs running around and they're just going straight through Blizzard and roots. I also pulled some fresh mobs to show what they look like with improved Blizzard on them, and yeah, just look at that scope of difference. So this is going to make boosting problematic, though I do remember AoE farms in Sunken Temple hopping up and down a pillar, as well as, of course, Zul'Farrak, which I'm assuming has not been mentioned here because it won't be active at launch and will be addressed in the appropriate patch. Say hello to our new Paladin AoE farm Overlord, perhaps? At least they will always be getting hit in the face. It's definitely a start, all the same, but one that's going to need monitoring because players are really good at finding workarounds for stuff like this. One Blizzard needs to keep their eye on, but I like what I'm seeing all the same. But moving on, and possibly the most exciting news for me actually, the community-made hardcore challenge is being officially recognized by Blizzard. What a great thing to have happened. It reads in the patch notes as, High Elf Watchers have made an appearance in Ironforge Library and Undercity Apothecarium, seeking to chronicle those who bear a soul of iron. So I'd like to start with a bit of history on the hardcore challenge and what it is in case you're a bit out of the loop. It's very simple. Get level 60 from 1. No deaths, no trading, no auction house, no mailbox. Be a self-sufficient character. Why on earth would anybody do this, you might say? The same reason people speedrun, not just raids in WoW either, but in general like in ESA or GDQ. They like doing X activity. However, they've done it so many times the standard way that it's gotten repetitive or boring, but they still kind of want to do it, so they seek out their own challenge to spice things up a bit. Obligatory old school RuneScape mention here. In that game, a few players started off very successful series, notably Boaty's One Man Army or Foe's Ultimate Iron Man series, where they played the game as unofficial Iron Man with their own rule set, self-sufficient accounts, get as far as possible, don't die, pretty self-explanatory stuff. And Jagex implemented Iron Man mode officially back in 2014, which has now grown to be a widely popular game mode, with many divergent game types around it and its different rule sets. The two guys at the forefront of pushing it to be in the game even have their own NPCs on Tutorial Island and in Lumbridge, which is pretty cool. So how does our Iron Man mode work in WoW, or Soul of Iron, I suppose? So it's a buff that can be picked up from High Elves in either Ironforge or Undercity. If you die prior to arriving there, you cannot pick up the buff. This buff, or active effect, I guess I should say, it's not a buff, it doesn't give you any buffs as such, shows that you have never known defeat, indicating you are a hardcore character who has never died. You also get a special boy emote, wowee. If you die, you get a Tarnished Soul debuff that reduces all stats by 1%, effectively showing, well, you've died. And it doesn't appear to stack, I tried. When a hardcore character dies, they leave behind a soul of iron on the floor. It looks like when you kill a ghost mob in the game. It would be fun to see the name level, perhaps even class of the player too on this. You appear to be able to remove or regain the hardcore effect as you wish from the same NPC that gives it to you. You are also able to trade, receive mail, use the auction house, and group with anybody as a character branded with a soul of iron. So it's kind of a bit like the community hardcore challenge, but not really. I think, first of all, it's cool that there is a proper way that you can recognize a hardcore character, but a bit more commitment into it would be nice, because for a lot of people, they're going to start at level 1, get a mage port to a starter zone they prefer, and kick off from there, which isn't very Iron Man-y, or receive gold, or enchanted items, profession kits, get boosted through dungeons for items or for quests still. I feel like there's going to be a handful of hardcore guilds that are going to regulate things under the pre-established rule set. I think it makes sense that once you've chosen to be a hardcore character, you cannot remove the brand without a 7-day wait plus authenticator, as in you need to be absolutely 100% sure that you want to remove it, and once it's gone, that's it, you can't get it back. Yes, this is literally copy pasting the old school RuneScape system, but I like the commitment of it. I feel as though in WoW in its current state, removing the ability to group or trade is a bit of a problem that doesn't fit at the moment in the long run. Now for the hardcore community at the moment, they do have duo and trio runs where you can trade between one another, as well as hardcore dungeons where all characters must be hardcore, as well as in a certain level range, and you can only do each dungeon once. And that works because the challenge within the community is get level 60. If you were just playing an Iron Man post 60, you run into two rather large issues. Class capability as a solo player, what I could do on a warlock or a hunter is so much different from a warrior or a paladin, and professions being restricted to 2, meaning you have to drop and retake them a lot. The raid content entirely defeats the point of being a solo player as well, so it feels as though it's kind of off bounds unless your entire raid is hardcore. Essentially, in WoW, not everybody can do everything, and that's a bit of a problem for Iron Man players. Season of give everyone every profession slot, maybe? Also, an Iron Man is a long-term thing. This server is going to last for 12 months, after which we still don't know what will happen. Part of the hardcore community idea is to be somebody that acts in good faith towards the challenge and wanting to take part in that. And I think the community guidelines will fill the gaps here until maybe one day the game fits the format of just Iron Man rather than hardcore a bit better. Also, you're kind of susceptible to griefs on the hardcore from mob aggro from other people, infernals, Terry the Devourer paying Storm a visit. Yeah, there's gonna be some rather tilting deaths, no doubt. All the same, very excited about this. If you know me, you know I rather like my leveling, so this has definitely raised the interest levels for Season of Mastery. But moving on, the bit you're probably most excited about, raid changes. So on the first raid pass on the beta, Blizzard restored the old raid mechanics and slapped a 100% health buff on Onyxia and all of Molten Core, including the trash. And it was pretty underwhelming. Since then, we have had arguably one of the biggest bits of Classic news ever, to be honest. This is it, folks. If Classic Plus has a real starting point, this is it. This blue post is it. Let's take a look at it. They say, it became obvious quickly that the list of actual changes to most content in Molten Core and Nyxia was extremely short. I think there are about 4 changes total. I thought there wasn't that much, you know. They go on to say, we suspected that the total impact of the changes would likely not be meaningfully felt by players in 2021 who have an enormous amount of experience in these raids. We went with that blanket 100% health buff and that handful of restored mechanics. As we watched beta testers in game and listened to the reactions to our changes and restorations, it confirmed what we already thought going into this test. Merely raising mob health and restoring a few removed mechanics was not hitting the mark for what we wanted for a season focused on faster progression and more challenging content. As a result, with the next upcoming beta build, we're making some significant adjustments to almost every encounter in Molten Core and Onyxia's lair. Now that is a big deal. They then say, we don't intend these or any future changes we make to Season of Mastery raid encounters to increase the difficulty of the content to a point where experienced prepared raid groups will have to wipe for days or weeks to progress it. We also don't intend to change the fights so much that they become completely unrecognizable or fundamentally different from their classic versions. Our intent is to provide something subtle and fresh to go along with Season of Mastery that feels very much in keeping with the spirit of the original encounters. So, significant adjustments but subtle and fresh. This has a lot of potential. I kinda wish they wouldn't beta test this stuff as much, to be honest. It feels as though we already know everything before we actually get to experience it. All the same, people would absolutely blast their way to level 60 with these XP buffs, and there'd be streams and videos about it on day 2, so you can't really avoid it unless you just avoid all information at all costs. But I do wonder how much people really want harder raids, seeing how SSC and TK is being a bit of a guild killer at the moment. I don't think you can push Classic too much, as it has two things that make it hard to, well, make it hard. There's only one difficulty, and you have to get 40 people to do whatever song and dance a fight requires. So what kind of changes might they do? Well, let's speculate a little bit. I think they might add small core hounds on Magmadar that mimic his abilities and more spawn as the fight goes on. Maybe they don't mimic the fear, that'd be kind of obnoxious. Kind of like the fight in Blackrock Caverns in Cataclysm, if you know the one. Have the Rain of Fires persist for the entire fight on Gehennas, making the encounter space shorter as the fight goes on. On Shazra, instead of just blinking then pressing Arcane Explosion, he now marks 3 people with a 5, 7, and 9 second debuff, which after they wear out, he teleports to each player and does an Arcane Explosion in order, meaning you've got to sort out some kind of spreading very quickly or 2 Arcane Explosions, and you're probably dead. Have Golomag the Incinerator do, you know, a bit more incinerating rather than just meleeing the tank, and so on. That's the kind of things I expect. Some update on the current abilities rather than overhauls to where the fights aren't even remotely similar. This has potential, it really does. Very exciting times, and personally, I am more interested in Season of Mastery than I was prior. However, I've got to say it, surely Season of Mastery will set the standard for raids moving forwards in future seasons, assuming this is well received. Going back on updating raids in the future would be like bringing spell batching back in for Classic again. Nobody wants that. I'm sure there'll be a season of we're going to change classes a lot eventually. Debuffs being removed does this a little bit, but can certain classes just not go boom in 1 minute? Your Ret, your Ellie, your Enhanced Shadow Boomy, and so on. Once you're happy with the fights and how they play out, take a look at the fight length once it's decided for Season of Mastery, and make some adjustments on the mana costs. I mean, with what we have on the beta at the moment gear-wise, I equipped what I could. It would have been nice with target dummies to show this better, but we didn't get any, unfortunate. But baseline a mage with its mana bar can cast nearly 25 frost bolts, whilst Boomkin has gas in the tank for 15 starfires. Of course, you need to add all your extra mana effects, your potions, your dark runes, your evocation, your innovates, and so on and so forth, but there's such a big baseline difference between them. There could be a full balanced season of discovery at some point in the future. Raids are going to be more difficult, so it may actually enforce the melee meta even more so and push out the less viable classes. I think it'd be very nice if we give them more of a chance to actually be able to play their character, even if they still obviously aren't going to be anywhere near topping the meters. Overall though, very happy with the direction, very keen to see what gets added raid-wise. That's going to be interesting to check out. I'll definitely keep up to date on that. This is it though, this is pretty much your Classic Plus content. Go for it, Blizzard, let's see what you have. As always, let me know your thoughts on everything we've gone over and whether this has changed your mind towards Season of Mastery at all. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I shall see you all in the next one very soon.